Hi everyone, in this video I'll be discussing some of the stuff I did this summer outside of my day job. First thing I'll be talking about is actually a trip. So YC is this startup incubator thing, and in mid-June, so June 16 and 17, they decided to fly out a couple thousand people to San Francisco to listen to speakers talk about AI and stuff. It was a pretty fun event. The speakers were mildly interesting, and some notable ones included the OpenAI guy and the Coursera guy. YC also hosted some after parties at which various fun things happened, including the Tech Roast Show people. So they came to this after party to do a stand-up routine, and here's a little preview of them.
This is your speaker. We have this shit, whatever this shit is. The most high-tech event of the summer. What is this? You guys couldn't even come up with a payment. You couldn't figure out payment. What tickets? Carnival tickets? And it's like you would think the carnival tickets, maybe one ticket buys a meal. No, a ticket is $1. This makes no sense at all. And why do you sound like an airline pilot right now?
I also took this trip to explore the Bay a bit more. So a friend and I went to Bayland Nature Preserve and saw a lot of good nature as well as birds. After getting back to Cambridge, I continued one of my projects that I had started during the semester, which was building a processor out of only transistors. As part of that, we need an output, so this is a breakout board for a VGA experiment. The idea here is you have a Raspberry Pi hooked up to a VGA cable displaying images, and hopefully this will help me understand how to do outputs. So the way that a printed circuit board is made is you have a sheet of copper on some non-conductive material, which is an insulator. You cut out the parts of the copper you don't want, and then you're left with some traces, which are essentially connected bits of copper that you can connect your components to. So on the right here, you can see that there's just 6 different nets or pieces of connected copper, and those are going to be the 6 different wires within a VGA cable. So on the left here is a VGA cable that I cut in half. I got it at SwapFest because I didn't want to cut my own VGA cable. What SwapFest is a monthly event that happens on Sundays near MIT where people sell various electronics components and other goods. I got this VGA cable for free because the person who was selling it didn't want it anymore, so I just cut it in half, broke out the wires, and then soldered it to the breakout board onto some header pins. And this made it easier to connect to the Raspberry Pi over here in the bottom left. And you can see it is displaying the Mandelbrot set. The way I did this was I got some example code off of GitHub. There's a repo called Pico Playground that contains example code that you can run on a Raspberry Pi, and one of them is VGA output. So I took one of the examples, displayed it here. There's also a text display mode. So you can see here in the center, there is text being displayed. And on the very right, this is the Julia set, which I modified from the Mandelbrot set to render that fractal. You can also do cool animations with VGA. So here's a spinning donut that I had Claude Code write most of the logic for. The animation is relatively smooth, but there is some frame dropping. I'm not sure why, but still a result that I'm relatively satisfied with. One thing that's nice to have on your boards is solder mask. This is the green stuff that goes on your boards and prevents the traces and other stuff from getting damaged. So I was experimenting a lot with how to do this process. The type of solder mask I used was UV curable solder mask. And the way it works is if you shine a UV light on it, it will harden and become solid. Otherwise, it's like kind of a paste and you can wash it off. To get this to work, you print out a stencil, which is a piece of transparent plastic with some ink on it, and you put it on top of the board. In between it and the board is the solder mask. So once you shine a UV light on it, the parts that have ink on them will prevent the solder mask underneath from solidifying, and you're left with a negative image. So the way you do it is you squeeze the solder mask onto the board, you put the stencil on, you shine a UV light, and you wash away the parts that you don't need after about 30 to 60 seconds. So here is a video of me and my friend Josh doing the final part of that process.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't completely even application. This means we're gonna have to print another one.
Oh wait, should we bring it to a sink so we don't get stuff everywhere?
That's true.
Already going to shambles.
Or we could do it on the lid.
No, sink.
Some areas were not very
Yeah.
well masked. It's okay, we'll do better on the flip side. Okay, ready?
Uh-huh.
Oh, underexposed.
Yeah, very underexposed.
Okay, this turned out pretty well. So the question is, should we do another run? Should we put more solder mask or should we just go to the backside?
I think we should go to the backside.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm very concerned about why this area was like not properly exposed and why it's circular.
I'm pretty sure we did boom, 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 boom. That's weird. I don't know.
Hi, we're back and we're
What do you mean we're back? It's over. Sorry, not a good way to start.
we're gonna look at how the backside turned out. You can already see some of it peeling off where the
Go.
go. Okay, so this part looks pretty good. It might be a little bit difficult to solder. I think we cured some parts that we should not have.
If it's like on the edge,
Uh-huh.
usually you can kind of pick it away with your finger.
Okay, but I think these turned out really clean. Why did these areas just not expose?
I don't know.
Like, I'm very confused. So the next thing I decided to do was a SMD transistor D-latch. Since I'm trying to build everything out of transistors, I need to know how to make the most basic components out of them. A D-latch is one of the most simple units of memory you can make. It stores 1 bit of memory and has a data pin and an enable pin. So those are the two switches on the left here. Whenever you press the enable pin, the circuit will remember what the data pin was at the time. So if you have the data set to a 1 and you press enable, it'll turn on 1 and it'll stay that way until you press enable again, for example. On the right here are 2 failed D-latches and 1 successful D-latch. You can see I did it without solder mask, which was a very time-consuming process because 2 of them literally failed. But on the left here with the solder mask, you can see it was way easier to not make bridges, and therefore I got it on my first attempt. Here is the schematic for the D-latch. You can see here there are 2 NOT gates, which are these 2 transistors over here, and they're wired together in such a way that they have 2 stable states. Either the middle wire is on or the middle wire is off, and it stays that way until you disrupt one of the wires. The way we control it is with these 2 AND gates over here. One of the inputs to each of the AND gates is the enable signal, and the other signal is the data. For the top one, it is inverted, and for the bottom one, it is not inverted. Actually, I should clarify, these are NAND gates, so when you have the signals both on, it will pull the output down to 0. So you need both of them to be on for the output to be off. So when you press enable, and data is not pressed, then it will store 0, and if you press enable and data is pressed, it will store a 1. And now, here is a video demo of how that works. This is a slightly different board, but you can see one of the inputs is enable, and the other input is data, and it will latch whatever data is when you press enable. This is one of the designs I made for the output module. So I don't want to use VGA for the eventual board because the timing is a little bit complicated, and also it's cooler to make it from scratch. So this is a 16 by 16 LED panel made up of 4 smaller 8 by 8 grids. So the way it works is there are 2 16-bit registers, one on the right and one on top, and they control the rows and the columns. So if a row is on and a column is off, then that LED will turn on. Any other combination, the LED will be off. So the inputs here are 1 address bit, a clock signal, and 16 data pins. Whenever the enable signal is pulsed, then the 16 data bits will be fed into whichever register is selected by the address bit, and it'll latch that data. In this way, you can write different combinations of on and off patterns for the rows and the columns. Doing this fast enough will allow you to render any 16 by 16 image you want. So this was actually the board that Josh and I were doing the solder mask with in the previous video. Didn't end up working, but I just wanted to show the first version of the display module. At this point, it is July, so for 4th of July, we watched the fireworks on the roof. That night, we cooked dinner in my friend's place, and we had some leftover whipped cream, so here's my friend doing a cool trick with the whipped cream. Oh, yeah. So that first LED matrix didn't work because the pinout was really complicated. I decided to make a simpler LED grid using literal LEDs. So each of these boards will require 64 5mm LEDs, and it's the same idea, except you have a slightly more intuitive way of ordering the rows and the columns on the component. The solder mask process actually turned out pretty well. So on the bottom here, you can see there's like one spot that's not covered and like another one in the corner, but overall pretty good. Did not end up wiring this up, but going forward, I think it'd be a cool component to use. Here are some videos of the milling process that was used to produce these boards. Looking good. At this point, I decided to take a break from hardware and do a little bit of software. So this was an idea I had a long time ago, but I didn't get to implement it until recently. What happened was, one night I was like, I should vibe code something. What should I vibe code? And I scrolled through my list of ideas because sometimes I just get good ideas and I write them down for later. And I was like, oh yeah, this idea should be totally implementable in one night. And it was. So I started making it with Claude Code, and then about halfway through, I realized it was not going in a direction that I wanted it to. Some of the design was off, some of the logic was off, so I took the rest of it manually. The source code is actually public on GitHub. So if you go to this link, which I'll drop in the description below, you can actually check out the source code and see how I made it. There's also a live deploy. So if you go to howfastcanyousshake.me, you can check out the app, play the game for yourself, try as many times as you want. So here's how the game works. You go to howfastcanyoshake.me, you press start. It might ask you for permission to access your device motion API because because that's how it detects shakes. If you're on Android, it probably won't ask you, and you just press allow, and you start shaking your phone. You have to make sure your ringer is on in order for the sounds to render, and you have to turn up your volume. But once you do, every time you shake, it'll produce a little click. It also does a little sound at the end. So the sounds, fun fact, were actually done by Claude Code. The way it works is there's an audio processor node of some kind. It generates some sort of sine wave and makes a really satisfying metronome click. So the strat here is to like sort of tense up your wrist and your entire arm and just shake it as fast as you can. So 88, I think you can do better than that. Give it a go. There's also a global leaderboard, so you can check out the scores here. The 301 score is actually not legit. It was my friend who I challenged to hack the app. The 211 scores, though, are legit, and so far I think they're the highest legit scores that have been submitted publicly, at least. And one of them was done using Massage Gun, which I will show in a clip very shortly. And the other one is done with a very clever strategy that I'm not going to tell you now, but I challenge you to find it yourself and see if you can get up to that high of a number. There's also a little settings menu here, so you can turn off the sound if you want, and you can also turn off haptics on Android. On Android, you can actually control the device haptics through web APIs, which you can't do on iOS, which is a little unfortunate, but on Android, if you shake the phone, it will also vibrate whenever it detects a shake in addition to the sound. On the left here is an earlier iteration of the app. This was mostly vibe-coded UI. I actually fixed it up. Before this, it was really, really ugly. There was like gradients everywhere, and there was like a box outline something. I cleaned it up a lot to get it to this state, and now I think it looks even better, which shows that vibe coding is not as good at UI as I would like at the moment, though I'm sure it'll get better. On the right here is how we actually detect shakes. So inside the phone is an accelerometer that reports XYZ data, which you can access through web APIs, which is amazing. It records the magnitude of acceleration in each axis in meters per second squared. You can get the net acceleration by taking the square root of the sum of squares of each axis, and it produces this plot over here over time. So you have 10 seconds to shake your phone. It's sampled at about 60 hertz, so it will get about 600 samples of data. We detect a shake as a peak, so going from some acceleration to a higher acceleration and then back down to a lower acceleration. I acknowledge that this is probably not the best system. You ideally want to do something like dot product with the previous acceleration vector, and if it's negative, then you will have detected a shake, or something like that. But for now, this method works pretty well to detect a shake. And as promised, here's the video of the massage gun. I didn't get the video where it gets up to 200, but you can see the idea here.
Let's go.
Don't press too hard, I guess. 2, 1. Oh, it's worse.
Third try for the LED matrix was this design. So going back to the 8-pin version, this is the third iteration of the LED matrix design. This is the third iteration of the LED matrix design. I decided to make it modular, so you can see it is a 16 by 16 grid of LEDs made up of those 8 by 8 submodules. They have these edge connectors on the side, so in theory, you can put many of these together to make as big a grid as you want. And on the right here are some header pins that we soldered onto the board. In August, my friend also ran this thing called Millie Jam, which is like just a fun jam about her cat. And I decided to vibe code all of this again because I was like, surely this will not take more than 1 hour. And it ended up taking me like 4 hours to make this thing because there were so many bugs. But it's a soft body thing. You have an image. It can be any arbitrary image. It detects the outline by casting rays from the outside in to cut away the transparent parts. And then we use Matter.js to do the physics simulation for the soft body. There's a lot of springs here, which makes it a little not performant. And the WebGL stuff to render the textures like for the triangles and everything was a little bit complicated. I'm not really a shaders person. I don't really do computer graphics, but it was an interesting exercise in vibe coding that at least. And you have these nice little soft body things. I think the performance could be improved, but for now it runs decently fast on modern hardware, so I'm probably not going to touch this for a while. It doesn't work on mobile yet, but I'll drop a link to the site and you can play around with it on desktop. In August, I also took a trip to New York with a couple of friends, and here is a pastry shop that we went to. So left here is some matcha goods. There's like a little bar of gelatin matcha on top of these croissants. And on the right here is a cubicle croissant. So there was some chocolate stuff inside. It was really good, looked really funky, but was a good price. It was like $7 for the whole cube, and it was a pretty big cube. I also took the opportunity to see & Juliet. I'm a big fan of musicals, so this was obviously a must go. We also went to BCD Tofu House over here. That's the middle photo. Got some matcha at the Hey Tea Labs location in Times Square. There's some like pistachio shaved ice cream stuff. It was really interesting and also pretty good. and then I went to Washington Square Park to play chess with some hustlers, and I lost all of my games, but it was still pretty fun. On August 9th, I went to see AJR with a friend. They're on tour, so they did a concert near Boston. I was like, I have to go. It's about an hour train ride away, and I'm a pretty big fan, so I was obviously really excited. Here's some videos I took of their performance.
That was a fireman who fought fire so violent. I think I put my therapist while playing him my violin. But when you talk, it's like, wow, I'm not crazy. Hey, don't kill me.
I was also doing a lot of machine learning stuff this summer. So I was working through Arena 3.0, which is a textbook about AI interpretability. I'll drop a link to it in the description, but essentially it has a bunch of exercises and readings about various topics, including transformer interpretability, RL, and LLM evals. Would highly recommend, but outside of that, I also wanted to explore some stuff of my own. So one thing I was really curious about is, can LLMs predict text backwards? Because the intuition is sort of that information only flows forward in text. You can't predict things that happened in the past because that would break the chain of causality. As it turns out, however, you can train an LLM to predict text backwards and have it be semi-coherent. So here's some sample output from the best stuff I have so far. The question is, what is gravity? And the answer is, gravity is a measure of the attraction between the Earth and other objects in the universe due to their masses. It is the force that helps to keep objects falling to the ground. This is pretty good in my opinion. You have words, you have grammar, you have syntax, and it's pretty topical. It's talking about gravity, and it says some correct stuff about gravity, even if it's not the best answer. So this model is a 125 million parameter model that I trained on MIT infrastructure. So there's this cluster called Engaging. Every student and affiliate of MIT is allowed to just SSH in and use it, which is pretty great. You can get up to 2 GPUs at a time, and they have H200s, which I used to train this. Training data was broken up into 2 parts, first pre-training and then instruct fine-tuning. For pre-training, I used FineWeb EDU, which is a collection of high-quality educational data sets related to all sorts of topics, and it made for a model that was pretty good at producing baseline reverse tokenized text. I only used the 10 billion token sample, so it was a little bit smaller, but still big enough to train the 120 million parameter model. I'm working on a bigger model, so either 2 billion or 7 billion parameters that is able to actually produce coherent outputs. I should mention that there is actually ongoing research in this field. In early July this year, so very recent, this paper was released about a reverse language model, and they also apply it to some forward language model stuff to help improve its performance. I'm not really looking at that, but it was encouraging to know that some people had the same idea and got relatively good results. You can see here are some sample outputs. Just read through them. I will link the paper in the description if you want to check it out some more. Now, the problem with this paper is that they say we will release all models, training code, and pre-training data to facilitate future research, but they haven't done it yet, and it's been like 2 months. To be fair, I don't know if this paper is actually published yet or if it's just a preprint on arXiv, but anyways, I was not patient enough to wait for them to release their code, and I was like, I'm going to do it myself to see if it's possible. Learned a lot about training stuff from scratch, and I also wanted to extend the work that they already did in the paper, so I got some instruct datasets for fine-tuning. They didn't do this in the paper, they just did regular completions, but I was like, I want to ask questions to this reverse LLM. The way it works is you take an instruct dataset, which is formatted as a series of questions and answers from the user and the assistant, respectively, and you reverse the order of the data so that you have the assistant prompt and then the user answer, and then you reverse that entire string. That way there's still some causality. I think if you were to have the model read the assistant stuff and then the user stuff, you couldn't really know what to predict, and that would actually just not work. So the training data here is still, in essence, you have the user query first, but it's a reverse string, and then you have the answer, but it's reversed. Fine-tuned on that, the results were pretty good. These are different runs I did on weights and biases. The different curves here are just different configurations for the training parameters, but it was able to produce pretty good text. And so far, this is the best we have. What are the steps to cook good tofu? The model generates. Steps to cook good tofu. Cut the tofu into a round or rectangular shape to ensure even cooking. Coat the tofu on the frying pan with a little bit of oil to make it flaky. Peel and press the tofu before folding it. This will help achieve a creamier texture. Use firm or extra firm tofu. Add spices like ginger, garlic, or paprika for added flavor. And I'm like really surprised at the quality of this response because it was able to generate backwards by looking at the input prompt, which is backwards, and you would think that text is causal. So anyways, I'm still working on this. The code for this is on GitHub, so I will link to it in the description. I'm still working on training a bigger model, as mentioned, as well as collecting better data. If you have any tips, please let me know in the description. I would love to hear your ideas. I'm also working on making a deployment where you can actually chat with this thing. Right now, all of this was produced in a notebook, so it's not too easy to replicate, but hopefully I'll get that up running soon. Now, since I am in Cambridge the whole summer, and MIT happens to be in Cambridge, I got to participate in EC Build. EC is East Campus, which is one of the halls on MIT, and every year they build a thing on campus. So this year, we were building a roller coaster and a fort. I was working on the fort, but this is a photo of the roller coaster, and here are some burgers that I was grilling. It's a tradition to do grills during build and during freshman orientation to feed the builders and the freshmen alike. Since I'm also moving back into my dorm, actually that's where I am right now, I want to decorate the space a little bit, and I wanted to make a color organ. Now the way that works is you have something playing music, and then you have the lights respond to the music. The mapping goes from red, green, blue to the bass, mid-range, and treble energies of the music. So you sort of sample it. I'll have a demo video of it later, but the music reacts in real time. So the way the hardware works for this is you have an ESP32, which has wireless capabilities. And this makes it really nice to control the lights because it means you don't have to plug your computer in or whatever's playing the audio in to the lights themselves. You can do it all over the internet or Bluetooth. And it controls these 3 LEDs through these 3 MOSFETs. A MOSFET is a transistor and allows you to control higher voltages using lower voltages. So the ESPs produce 3.3 volts of output, and the LEDs, well, these LEDs are just like demo LEDs, they're 2 volts, but the actual strip itself will use 24 volts, which means you need to control 24 volts using 3.3 volts, and that's what the MOSFETs are for. You also have these things on the right here, which are voltage regulators. The whole thing will be powered by 24 volts, but if you plug that into the ESP, it's going to fry the ESP, and that's why we need to step it down to 12 volts and then 5 volts first in order to power the whole thing. Besides just having an LED strip, I also wanted cool visuals to go along with it. So I wrote this thing for a class back in like March, and the idea was to have a fractal respond in real time to the music using the same sort of frequency mapping. So red, green, blue still maps to bass, mid-range, treble, but you also have a fractal, the shape of which responds to the volume of the music. So the louder the music is, the faster it moves, and this results in beats moving the shape really fast. So the whole thing just has a really rhythmic feel to it. And here's a demo of it on a big TV screen. If you pair this up with the LED lights, you get something that looks like this. I also mentioned that I'm moving back into my dorm, so here are a couple of videos of me moving back in. Guys, welcome to my MIT room tour. We are going back inside my coffin single in your house. If I can get this door to open. Okay, here we go. Okay, just as I remember it. Hang on. So we got furniture, we got a bed, we got a desk, and we got a window here with a grand old view of Simmons Hall. So I'll be unpacking today and setting this room back up. We have dislodged this thing. We're trying to loft the bed and we're kicking it from the frame upside down to achieve that. And that's it. These are just a couple of the things that I did this summer. Lots of stuff, too much to document, but the school year is about to start, so I'm going to sign off for now and say thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.